Belief is not reality. You may believe in God, but your belief has no more reality than that of the man who does not believe in God. Your belief is a result of your background, of your religion, of your fears. And the non-belief of the communists and others is equally the result of their conditioning. To find out what is true, the mind must be free from belief and non-belief. I know you smile and agree, but you will still go on believing because it is much more convenient, so much more respectable and safe. If you do not believe, you might lose your job. You might suddenly find that you are nobody. It is being free of belief that matters, not you smiling and agreeing. And this week's opening quote comes from Jiddu Krishnamurti. Welcome to Surviving the Matrix, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maxwell Igan. It's a pleasure to be with you once again, and I will be your host for the next hour. Belief really is an interesting thing, folks, and as put so eloquently in the opening quote, it isn't a matter of believing one thing or the other. It's a matter of being neither in a state of belief or of non-belief, but being in a state where you are simply open to all information and able to consider everything without particularly adding any emotional attachment to the outcome of any information and not choosing to prefer one belief over another or one outcome over another. And the real problem with beliefs, whether they're religious or political, is that they hinder any understanding of ourselves, because belief acts like a screen through which we look at ourselves and through which we look at the world we live in. And when I suggest to people that belief is the enemy of knowledge and they should really question what they believe, many people look at that information and say, well, you're just saying that we need to go through life sort of bumbling through on the fence and never believing in anything. And it isn't a matter of that, folks. It's a matter of differentiating between belief and knowledge. It's like the sun coming up every day. Every day it gets light. You don't have to believe it's going to get light every day. It just happens. You know it's going to happen. It does not require belief for this to occur. Same as if you fall off a ladder, you know you're going to get hurt. It isn't a matter of belief, it's a matter of knowledge. When you know something, you don't need to believe it, because belief is the acceptance of something as being true. But if you know something to be true, then you don't need to believe it to be true, because it's something that you already know. The problem with many people in the modern world is they confuse their beliefs with knowledge and their knowledge with beliefs. And it is really our beliefs that have got us into so much trouble, most especially our belief in authority and our belief in where remedy may be found. It's been really interesting seeing a lot of these movements start, and nobody really has a direction for them. You know, if you get this big movement and you awaken everybody to this great truth, what is then the direction? What is the path to freedom from that point? And even with a lot of the information that I've presented to people when I've suggested paths to remedy, people have allowed their belief systems to get in the way as well. Even when I talk about Palestine as being a remedy, people allow their belief systems to interfere with that as well. You start talking about the issues between Palestine and Israel, and people think it's a racial issue that you're talking about. They think, oh, he's lost in a race war or something. They're not seeing the legal opportunity that it provides. They're not seeing that it's actually a humanitarian issue. People have to put all of this thought of race and colour and creed and religion out of their mind and realise that what we're dealing with here is a humanitarian catastrophe, and also a situation that provides a legal remedy, a legal key that could heal all the other situations that we face on this earth and open up all the rabbit holes that we're looking into for investigation, open up all the doorways so that nothing was blocked to us anymore. And folks, what we have to do with all of the things we're doing and all the research we're looking at is find what leads to remedy. And we're not going to do that if we allow our belief systems to interfere and get in the way all the time. I mean, everything about this system is designed to enslave us and designed to keep us preoccupied with infighting and looking for what the real doorway is and looking for the real way out of this situation. Looking down rabbit holes and finding people to point the finger at, but again, nothing that leads to remedy. Because even if you find people to point the finger at, where is the remedy? Where is the freedom? Where is the path to freedom? It's got to come from people changing their own inner perspective, their own way of looking at things and their own way of interacting with people, and most especially their belief in authority. Because authority simply isn't real. It's just an idea that's been instilled into us. And it is this belief in authority which has caused so many of the problems that we face. It's this belief in authority which prevents us from ever standing up and simply calling things for what they are. And of course, the real problem with that, folks, is that not many people know what things are, really. They just don't. Too many people have their own idea of what things are, and that's what they call, but really that's just based on their belief system. It's not based on something that they actually know, or they may actually think that they know it, but generally it's based on a belief system. But folks, something that you don't have to believe, something that you probably know, is that we are living in a slavery system and that the world is run by criminals. That's something that you know as much as you know that it's going to get light tomorrow. So why don't people stand up and call that out? Why don't people, rather than attempting to promote their rabbit hole as the absolute truth, when it's simply based on their belief that it's the absolute truth, why don't they concentrate on things that they know? The world is run by criminals, folks. It's run by the worst people possible for the job, all of whom are in breach of their own law that they inflict upon us. And they get away with what they're doing because we never call that. We never ask them to show how their law is valid when they can be seen to be in breach of it themselves. And it's not acceptable that they place themselves above the law, because if the law is not applied evenly, then there is no law. It's as simple as that, because there are no people who have any more worth than anybody else. Simply because politicians are elected to positions of management does not automatically qualify them to be above the law that they create for other people. But we never ask these questions, and we never look at it that way. We never address that which we know to be true. We always seem to go down rabbit holes and establish a belief system and find out what we may believe to be true and then present that as some form of remedy. But really it's not. It's just another rabbit hole, and it's just an idea that people are attempting to get other people to agree with. That's what all these rabbit holes are, and ultimately, folks, will never have the answer to any of them. Not to a degree where anything can be confirmed 100%. We won't have any of that until we've gained freedom. And that's why all the conspiracies are constructed in the way they're constructed. Because in a really good conspiracy, you'll never get all of the truth. There'll always be something there, some little niggling question to keep you guessing. Because that's what they want to do. They want to tie you up in these little rabbit holes, tie you up in argument, and tie you up in guessing that you may have the truth and thinking that you know the truth, when really it's just a belief system. Because the truth is not going to be known until we've established freedom. And I would suggest that we have real opportunities for freedom now if people could simply put down their stuff with each other and turn and address that which they know. And that is the fact that this system is run by criminals, folks. We all know it. Even people who aren't awake to any type of conspiratorial mindset of reality knows that the politicians are corrupt. They know the world is run by criminals. And if we were to realize that there is legal mechanisms we can use to deal with that, and if the legal mechanisms don't work, well, at least we have then established to the sleeping masses that there is no law because it's not applied evenly. And I think we're going to find that we've made a little bit of headway at that point, folks. I think we're going to find that a lot of people who've just woken up to the fact that they're being played, if we're sensible about how we approach things. But again, I think that in order to achieve this, we need to be able to put down our belief systems, because it's our belief systems that are holding us back. If we just keep fighting and arguing about everything, and it's all these different ideas of who to blame or who to point the finger at or about what's really going on, and none of us are really addressing the situation at hand right now with the things that are available to us to be able to address the situation. And there are things there, folks, and I think it would be very beneficial if we were to just stop and turn and address the current situation we are in, and we would find that we would have the freedom to find out a lot more than what we are currently doing by constantly indulging in arguments and attempting to force our belief systems upon others. You need to get to a point where we know what's going on, folks. Then we don't have to guess and we don't have to argue. But I think at the moment many people are putting the cart before the horse. And look, I've done everything I can to attempt to unite people. I've attempted to meet major voices in the so-called truth movement and unite as many people as I can there. I've met people that I've trusted in that movement, and I've found them later to be not so trustworthy. I've been disappointed on most counts in regard to the people that I've tried to unite. And even with the online so-called truth movement, attempting to bridge the gap between the flat earthers and the globe earthers is a nightmare in itself. You know, if these people could put down their differences and stop arguing about the shape of the prison and realize that it's a prison and we need to take the opportunities to free ourselves from it while they're available, then we may get somewhere. And I've tried uniting these movements, asking them if they could just please put down their stuff with each other and respect each other and debate rather than argue. But of course, all I've managed to achieve from doing that is to receive hate mail from both sides of the camp. But I've tried to unite them anyway, just in an attempt to try to get people to put down their differences while we still have the time to fix this situation. But folks, I seriously wonder if mankind is going to step up to the plate. I seriously wonder how bad people are prepared to allow things to become before they are going to be prepared to put down their rabbit holes and just turn and call this system out and call these criminals out for what they are and change things, because we could do it very quickly. And it has been rather frustrating, folks, in the last 8 or 9 years. I've tried everything I can think of to attempt to unite the people. I really thought Palestine would do it. I really thought people would open up their hearts to this humanitarian crisis and see the legal key that it provides for us. But as I said before, people have been caught up in the whole race issue and the religious issue, and they think, oh, he's gone down the racist card and he hates Jews now or whatever. People really don't seem to listen, and many people just seem to lapse into programmed responses when you talk about these situations, especially the situation regarding Israel and Palestine. But it makes me wonder, folks, just how much people are prepared to take and whether they are prepared to embrace these opportunities while they are still available to us, because the issue that Palestine provides for us won't be there for too much longer if people don't stand up and do something about it. Be interesting to see what's going to unfold in the next couple of years, ladies and gentlemen. And again, it will depend upon people's belief systems. You know, one of the most all-pervasive belief systems that seems to have infected most people's minds is their belief that they don't have any power, their belief that they need to point the finger at somebody else and say, fix it, and their belief that they cannot make change themselves, when such is not the case. Everybody can make change if they are prepared to step into their power and stand up against the system. But of course, what prevents them is that they have to do it alone, because people are so terrified of uniting with the people around them. And as I said, folks, I've done everything I can to attempt to unite people. Even with Full Circle Project, we've got the community connected there for people to unite, and there are tens of thousands of people who have signed up to the Full Circle Project. But how many people are actually forming groups and putting things into action on the ground where they live? Because that is what is needed. And what prevents people, well, again, it's belief systems, their belief that they don't have the power to effect change, their belief that the politicians are anything more than managers of infrastructure, and that they have to do what the politicians say. You know, don't ever question the validity of the legislation these politicians roll out. when they should be, because that's another question you should ask. Who vets the legislation when it comes out? I mean, politicians write these pieces of legislation and they get enacted and suddenly become law, but who vets it? What, the other politicians? Do the police question this stuff when it's handed to them? Well, obviously nobody does, so obviously the people need to do it. And what they need to do, as I've said so many times, is establish whether the person who has enacted the legislation is actually suitable for the position, because there is a very good chance that he or she is a war criminal due to their support for the war crimes of the State of Israel. And folks, know that isn't racist and it isn't anti-Semitic. It's simply a legal opportunity to deal with a local problem on an international level. And by doing it that way, you can deal with it internationally on a local level, because all of the local problems we face in all of our countries can be dealt with in this manner if people are sensible about it. And if people are prepared to put down their racist thinking about it, their racial thinking about it, their ethnic thinking about it, their religious thinking about it, and simply view it from a humanitarian and legal perspective. If they're prepared to do that, then they're going to see that there is actually a very viable and very real key that is available to mankind right now, should we choose to use it. But what stops people going down this pathway and taking this avenue while it's available, of course, is fear. Because people are afraid of stepping into their power and afraid of having to actually do something themselves to fix the situation. But really, it's got to come from the people. That's the only place real remedy is ever going to be manifest, folks. It's got to come from the hearts of the people, but it's not going to happen until people change the way they view things. You know, we're never going to change the outer world until we change the inner world, folks. We're never going to change things until we change the way we think and change the way we feel and change what is inside us. But once we've done that work, once we have overcome those spiritual barriers, if you will, then we need to be able to apply them to the physical world that we live in. Because that's the only way we're going to find remedy. We've got to understand that it is the physical world that controls us, but it controls us via the etheric world, via our belief in authority, by our belief that all this legislation is real, by our belief that we don't have any power, by our belief that we're just little people, and our belief that we have rulers. And when we attempt to deal with that system, that control system, we do it from the wrong way. We go down all the paper avenues and all the legal avenues and pathways that they give us, but we don't ever approach it from a spiritual perspective and realize we've got to deal with it in the etheric and in the physical. But we can't deal with it in the etheric unless we know who and what we are. We've got to understand that we're dealing with people, just people. That's all it is. And we've got to be able to question these people and ask these people why they believe they have a right of ownership over us. You know, simply by asking that question, you empower yourself. That's the thing. I mean, I'm not expecting to be succeeding in any remedies simply by asking questions. What I'm attempting to do is empower people into understanding that they actually have power. Empower people into the rediscovery of themselves, because once people do rediscover themselves, then they feel that they can apply it to the world around them. Indeed, you feel that you must apply it to the world around you, because once you truly come into your own as a human being, as a beautiful living vessel holding this supreme aspect of consciousness that's been granted to you, this little aspect of the divine, this little frequency of consciousness that is you. And it's all an aspect of the divine, folks. Everybody and everything is an aspect of the divine. When you realize that in yourself, and you realize that you actually do have value and you are actually worth something, and there is nobody else on the earth that has any more value than you, we are all in this together, then you begin to see the need to speak out, and you begin to be empowered in wanting to speak out, and you begin to feel that you have the power to do so. Of course, our problem is that when we do speak out, we tend to do it towards police officers or whatever, who are trained psychopaths and thugs who just throw your head against the wall and tase you and do whatever they want. So that's the wrong approach. You've got to be approaching politicians and doing it at council meetings and doing it at public forums and doing it not on the side of the road to a police officer and not at a protest to a line of police officers, but in a manner that you're speaking to the people who are actually perpetrating the crimes, the politicians, and you're speaking to the public at large as well. You do that and you're going to find you get response from people because you're going to be speaking to people in a language they can understand and you're going to be reaching people's hearts. And when you speak the truth, you're going to find it resonates with people, ladies and gentlemen. So we can do these things and we can make a difference. And that's all I've ever wanted to do with this show is empower people into self-discovery and offer the perspective I have in the hope that it will lead to that and lead to them seeing things a little bit clearer and seeing things for the way they are. You know, the world has changed so drastically since I was a child. In the last 59 years, I've seen all sorts of changes. You know, there was a kind of freedom when I was a child that does not exist today. And in the last 10 years, the last 20 years, it's really snowballed and things are very, very different to what they were just a few short decades ago. And it's just escalating, folks. And the bottom line here is that the governments of the world are basically depopulating this earth. And I've said this many, many times in the past. You know, we are being exterminated by our governments. I mean, putting it bluntly, that's what's happening, folks. And just look at the directives that they've got in place. Look at Agenda 21. And I've spoken about how this is being introduced into all of our countries via the mechanism of local council. So that's where you need to put your focus. That's why it's so important for people to get involved on the ground in their local community, because that's where the directives are being implemented. But all of the things that we're doing, folks, are all designed to support the economic model, to support the continual stripping of resources from this earth, and to discard as much as humanity along the way as they can get away with, as quickly as they can get away with doing it. Because they only need enough people to run the machine. They don't need all of these so-called useless eaters, which is what they call them. And it's being puppeteered, folks. The whole thing is being orchestrated by politicians because we're not doing anything about it. We're too busy fighting amongst each other, joining movements and thinking our movement is going to provide a remedy, and we're not calling out that which we know to be that which we know it is. And that's what we need to do, because that is where we're going to find remedy. You know, we're only going to find remedy when humankind chooses to step into their hearts and stand up and simply call it. We do that, we'll find a remedy pretty quick, but people won't do it because they're locked into their belief systems and they're too fearful of ever expressing their own power or even very often believing that they have any real power. But folks, in the face of what is coming down the pike, really, it's the only option we have. We need to step into our power. We've got to stop being politically correct in our responses to this system and in our responses to the politicians. We need to clearly get it into our head that the politicians are killing us. They are doing everything they can to depopulate and control their respective countries. And that's what they're doing, folks. And in the face of that, why would someone choose political correctness? In the face of a slow kill operation, I guess, sometimes it just doesn't seem like you're really under attack, but you are. You know, a slow kill is a slow kill. It's no different to a fast kill. Perhaps it's even more sadistic and more insidious than a fast kill because it's done unbeknownst to the people and it's done very, very slowly. The screws are slowly turned up. And it's getting to a position now where the governments are even believing they can legislate vaccination. They can legislate all sorts of things which are incredibly damaging to human health. They can legislate to limit people's movement. They can do just about anything they want to do if they write it on paper because we're just letting them get away with it. And like I keep saying, folks, there are legal mechanisms in place to prove that their paper-based reality is all fiction anyway. It's all false and it's all convoluted because it is not applied evenly, and so therefore it does not serve the people, so we need to stand up and call it. The question is, what is it going to take for people to do so? You know, how bad are people willing to allow things to become? You know, due to all the recent terror attacks, many of which have been blatantly staged, folks, we've seen an incredible loss of rights in Western countries, like a loss of rights that's escalated to an unprecedented level that is just continuing to escalate, and it's happened very quickly, ladies and gentlemen. Many of the kids that are coming up out of school perhaps aren't noticing it because they're too caught up in their mobile phones, but it's been a very, very rapid change in the social structure in all of our respective countries. It has been very, very rapid, ladies and gentlemen, and it's only going to get more rapid if people allow it, if people don't stand up and call it out while they still have the opportunity to do so. And really one of the most effective things people can do on the ground, even if they don't want to stand up and call it out and get involved and be confrontational towards their politicians, one of the things they can do is simply boycott everything that is causing harm. Boycott anything that is causing harm, injury or death, folks. Don't buy any Israeli products. Don't pay into any government system while the government is funding war. And withdraw all support from your politicians. Withdraw all support from elections. Withdraw all support from all government institutions while your government is funding war crimes, because you're going to find that pretty well every government in the Western world is funding war crimes, and we have the ability to stop them doing that, folks, by withdrawing funding from them. But again, you need a strong, empowered community to really pull this off with any degree of effectiveness, which means breaking down the barriers between you and your neighbours and getting to know people and forming these strong relationships. I mean, I've been saying this for 9 years on air now, folks, that the local community is where the answer is going to be found, but it's only going to happen once people are prepared to open their hearts up to their neighbours and realise that it is by uniting with the people around you that you can create a strong communal response. And once you have that strong communal response, the local politicians really have nowhere to go, and if you ask them the right questions, they don't have a leg to stand on, and they can publicly discredit themselves and thereby provide the mechanism that you need to remove these criminals from power. And we all have the opportunity to do it, folks. So it's a really good idea if people can get involved on the ground, because that's where they're going to see a difference, and it's just a really empowering thing for people to do. But I think we've reached break time here, folks, so I'll leave it there for now. We're going to have a break. Thank you for joining me on the air today. It's always a pleasure to have your company, and I'll speak to you again in a few minutes. Thanks for listening. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, so, saying that your government wants to kill you, I suppose this is something that many people may find difficult to come to terms with. But really, folks, if you look at the world and you look at the actions of government, well, no matter how much you attempt to avoid the obvious, evidence would suggest that 1 and 1 does indeed make 2, and that this is what the governments are up to. And folks, really all you've got to do is look at the world, look at the environment that you live in, look at the social system you live in, look at the legislation you're subject to, and look at where things are going. Look at the education system. Look what they're doing to the children, how the kids really have no life skills anymore. They've removed everybody's means of survival from them. They are making it illegal to collect rainwater, ladies and gentlemen. They're doing everything they can to make it extremely difficult for anybody to survive, because everybody must comply with this economic model. And people are taught that the economic model is the all-important thing which keeps our society together, when really nothing could be further from the truth. You know, remember a few years ago when the US government failed and it wasn't there for a couple of weeks, folks? Nothing happened. The country didn't fall apart. Did that not indicate to you that you don't actually need government? That the infrastructure would run fine if the government wasn't there, and that all the government actually does is find new means of controlling the flow of infrastructure and the flow of resources so that they are able to control people. And that's what it's all about, folks. But really, we don't need government at all. In fact, all the problems that we face on this earth come directly due to the actions of government. And how much are we prepared to let these people get away with, folks? Look at what's just been uncovered in Australia, the amount of child abuse that's going on in detention centres. And the government pretends that it doesn't know about this sort of stuff, but of course it does. The government funds all of this sort of stuff. The government is the one who sets these detention centres up. All of these refugees who come into Australia could be treated much more humanely than they are, but the government chooses not to do so. Of course, they get away with it due to John Howard and the baby overboard scandal, which was a completely non-existent affair, which was completely fabricated by the government, but which served to shift the mentality of the Australian people and put them in a state where they really decided not to care about refugees from that point. But it's all due to government criminality that we see all of these problems in the first place, folks. In fact, every corporate issue, any rape of the environment, any problem that we see on the earth is ultimately the creation of government legislation, which has allowed the problem to be created to begin with. Because it's legislation that allows all of this stuff to happen, folks, and we attempt to put band-aids on symptoms rather than attempting to deal with the legislation. But it's got to the point where we've just got to step back and admit what's actually happening. And what's actually happening is the governments of the world are killing the people of the world. They're killing the people of their respective countries via whatever means they can get away with doing it. Whether it's through immigration, whether it's through GM food, whether it's through vaccination, wars, restriction of movements, keeping people in a state of scarcity so they become homeless and end up incarcerated within the prison system. They have various methodologies that they use, folks, but all of it is designed to oppress, control, and depopulate this earth. And it's going to continue until people call it out for what it is and realize that they've been scammed all along. You know, nothing that we're told about this world is the way we're told it is, folks. Nothing that we're told by government is true. Nothing that we're taught by our education system is true. I mean, sure, there's basics, 1 and 1 makes 2. We're taught how to read, write and spell to a certain degree. But basically, all the information we're given about reality, all the information we're given about history, all the information we're given about our social systems is very carefully screened and very carefully propagandized and used to indoctrinate people into a certain way of thinking and turn them into good little cogs in the big machine, turn them into people who never really think too clearly, who never ask questions, who never really view their government as anything other than their best friend, and who view anybody who thinks outside of the box as being a possible terrorist. This is kind of the way our education system's gone. And when you look at the actions of our government, folks, it's reprehensible. I mean, everything they do is reprehensible. Nothing that they do serves the people. And in everything that they do, they presume to place themselves above the legal system that they choose to inflict upon everybody else. And they're going to continue to do it until we call it. And that's why I keep repeating myself on these shows and asking people if they would please just take the time to look around them and then talk to the people around them, talk to their neighbours, and stand up and make a difference in your own community. And folks, with the way things are going, I really don't think we've got too much time left to achieve this. I think it's a matter of a few short years, and we're going to be in a very, very different world if we do not take the matter in hand very quickly. And no, that's not being paranoid, and that's not being fear-mongering, folks. It's just someone who's 59 years old, who's seen how the world has changed in the last 59 years, and has seen how rapidly these changes have been escalating in the last 2 decades. And this is an exponential curve, folks, and things are escalating faster and faster, and within the next few years, things are going to be very, very different if mankind does not step up to the plate. And just think about your government, folks. I mean, why do you need these people? Why do you need government there at all? And people will think, oh, of course we need government. If there wasn't government, then nothing would work. But like I said, a few years ago, there was no government in the United States for a few weeks and everything worked. Nothing changed. You know, the system is there. The social system is there. The infrastructure's there. All we need in government is for people to manage it properly. But government doesn't do that. What the people in government do is find more and more ways to steal from the populace. And how do they steal from us? Well, they do it by introducing legislation which gives them the ability to fine us for everyday activities, thereby restricting our movements and making us pay if we want to just live our lives in a normal fashion. That's what they do, folks. They just find more and more ways to steal from you because that's what fines are. That's what taxes are. That's what parking meters are. All of these things are designed to steal from you. And you might think, oh, we need parking meters, we need this, we need that, because otherwise the government wouldn't have any money to give us all the things that it gives us. But what does it give us? It gives us the stuff that we already pay for through other taxes. I mean, just petrol excise itself would pay for just about everything you need to run the entire country. You wouldn't even need any other taxes. And the fact is that all of the other taxes are just there to milk the wealth of the people. And all of the laws are there in order to create crimes so that people can be fined for everyday activity. Every time you create a new law, you effectively create a new crime. You know, I've spoken about that many times, folks. That's how come the crime rate is so high, because there is so much legislation preventing people from doing everyday things. And so suddenly people think, oh my God, look at the crime figures, and they think we need more police because the crime figures are out of control. But the crime figures are only out of control because now it's illegal to do that which you should be allowed to do without any laws restricting you. But the government chooses to restrict every single movement that people make, or put people in a position where they need to fill out a form and ask permission to carry out some everyday activity. And of course it costs them money to do that, so that's another theft. And if they step outside the lines while they're doing it, they get fined, so that's another theft. And meanwhile, they're taxed in every single aspect of their lives, with everything they do, everything they purchase, and every step they take anyway. So that is all government does. Government has kind of placed itself above a social system which could work fine without it, and they put themselves in a position where they are able to skim the cream off the top of every action that people make, feather their own nests with it, and depopulate the world to their heart's desire, which is exactly what they're doing. And they are all a bunch of criminals, folks, and they're doing everything they can to exterminate the people and get the world down to a manageable level so they can just sit back and enjoy their life on their pedophilic thrones. Israel began bombing Gaza Strip again last weekend as well, folks. Of course, they probably sent some Mossad agent in there to fire off a rocket into Israel so they could then test their new F-35 warplanes given to them by the United States by going in and bombing the hell out of Gaza Strip the way they just like to do. That's what they do, folks. They use the Palestinians to test all of their weapons and also to test new war strategies and crowd control strategies, like they'll go into West Bank and just set up a roadblock and create some sort of a scene so they can test how their new crowd control mechanisms work and what their new weapons are like when they test them on live targets. You know, Palestine provides a very, very good live weapons test lab, like a war games lab, whereby Israel is able to test all of its new weapons on live subjects and see how people react to these weapons and see how they react in certain situations. And that's a lot of what it uses Palestine for as well. It isn't just land grabbing. If it was about land grabbing, they would have grabbed all the land long ago. They also need the Palestinians there so that they can pretend that there is a terrorist threat at their doorstep, but it's also a very, very functional war games lab whereby they are able to test all their new weaponries and test all of the new planes and things that they're gifted from nations that support their terrorism, such as the United States. It really is horrendous to see what really does go on the ground in Palestine, folks. I actually was visited by a friend just recently who'd just recently visited West Bank, who confirmed for me that what he saw on the ground when he arrived there was instantaneous. The feeling and the apartheid, it was so obvious. And it was so obvious how the Palestinians are used by the Israelis basically to test their weapons and to test all their crowd control and everything that I've just outlined, and how convoluted it is, and how by the time it goes through all of the media and gets to the ears of the West, how lost it is in the translation, and how biased and backward what the media presents to the world actually is. And it became so obvious for him when he got there and saw it on the ground for himself. And as I said, he said it was instantaneous as soon as he arrived. It was so obvious, the oppression and what is happening to the Palestinian people, and the amount of hatred that the Israelis feel for the Palestinians. They really do go out of their way to provoke and incite and oppress the Palestinian people. And it's truly shocking to behold, ladies and gentlemen. But again, the real problem with all of this is that all of this type of activity is very much supported by our governments and funded by our governments, and it's done in such a way as to destabilize the world, which causes the people in Western countries to believe that there's this terrible Arab threat that's marching against them, and of course then they plead for their government to protect them, and the government's response is to lock them down into a police state. But folks, the Muslims are not attacking you. What is happening is your government is attacking the Muslims, and they are attacking you in order to protect you from the Muslims that they're attacking. It's a convoluted situation, but that's what's happening. And really, when you look at it, folks, since the 9/11 attacks, the United States and Israel and its allies have killed 4 million Muslims. 4 million, folks. 4 million people have been murdered in the last 16 years since the September 11 attacks. Murdered by Western governments in order to, keep the world safe, apparently. That's what we're told. They're doing this in order to stop global terrorism. But war is terrorism. When bombs are falling on your house, you're pretty damn terrified, folks. And to have gone out and killed 4 million people in Arab nations who are completely innocent of any crime, and then to claim that you're doing it to protect the world from terrorism is the most farcical, ludicrous, insane proposition I've ever heard anybody dare to utter on the airwaves. These politicians, folks, they're nothing but a criminal cabal who, as, like I said, have maneuvered themselves into a position where they are skimming the cream off the top of society. And we don't need them. We don't need government to be there at all. And if we are to have government, well, it needs to be an honest government that holds itself accountable to the law that it imposes on other people. But it is neither of those things. It is neither honest, nor does it respect the even application of law. Therefore, it is invalid. And it's just an idea anyway, folks. Government is just an idea that criminals wrote on paper and conned the rest of the world into buying into. And it's about time we called these people out and stopped the direction that we're going, and stopped all this killing, stopped all these wars, stopped all this mayhem, because all of it is unnecessary, and all of it has been created purposefully by governments, by the criminals who populate governments anyway. And we don't need any of it. It's all completely and utterly unnecessary. But it's going to continue until we call it. And my question, as always, is just how much are people prepared to take? How bad are they prepared to let things become before they stand up and call things for what they are? And really, folks, the only way we're going to make change is when we start applying ourselves to our local community, because that's where all the tyranny is coming from. We're always distracted with, the big elections, electing a new president or a new prime minister or a new head of the government for our state or whatever. We don't ever really pay attention to what's happening on the ground at our local council level, because it's what happens at the local council level that affects you on the ground where you live. And local councils are controlled directly by the United Nations under Agenda 21. And if we were to unite our communities and apply ourselves to our communities on the ground, we might actually make a difference here. But if we're not prepared to do that, then it's simply not going to happen. And while we're distracted and our attention is elsewhere, i.e. on the big elections, we're not really paying attention to what is happening on the ground where we live. But like I said, folks, that's where you are being affected, and that's where you can make a difference if you were to actually apply your energy to that situation on the ground in your own community. You have every means you need to do it. All you have to do is unite with the people around you and stand up and make a difference. And it's a lot easier to approach the people in your local community, like the councillors and the mayors and the politicians in your local community, because they're not really intimidating to the people around you. It's not as intimidating for the community to stand up and talk to the local mayor as what it is to go and talk to the local governor or the local whatever, or the president or the prime minister. People feel intimidated by that. But on the local level, it's just Joe Bloggs who lives down the road anyway. Everybody knows him, so there's no real problem with going and talking to him, and all you have to do is ask the right questions, and you're going to find that this individual exposes the fact that they are working for the United Nations. And at that point, you're going to find mechanisms you can use that exist within the legal system to either have these people held accountable or at least expose the corrupt nature of the legal system itself to the greater community at large. Either one of them is going to be a bonus, folks. Either one is going to be a step in the right direction. And of course, the other option is to simply do nothing. And we can't do that. What we have to do is figure out what we can do, and any steps we can take are going to be beneficial, because all of them are better than doing nothing. But hey, these are my suggestions. Start approaching these local politicians and let them know that the game is up, that we know what's going on, and that if they don't change things, and we don't expect them to, then we're going to change things ourselves. And not only that, but we're going to hold them accountable. Just do them the courtesy of letting them know this is what's happening. But whatever you do, folks, get involved in your local area. And hey, if my suggestions don't work for you, or you think you've got better ones, then feel free to post them on my videos, feel free to post them in my forums, feel free to post them on my YouTube clips, whatever you want to do. Feel free to share them with other people and offer your own suggestions. But whatever we do, we've got to start working cooperatively and find ways out of this mess, rather than simply shouting each other down and insulting people if we don't like their ideas, because there's far too much of that goes on, and frankly it simply plays into the hands of the ruling parasites. They love to see that sort of stuff, folks. They love to see us fighting amongst each other. They love to see us shouting each other down, and what we really should be doing is respecting each other and focusing on solutions. You know, what has been a real problem, something that's really held us back in this push for freedom, or whatever you want to call it, folks, is really the so-called truth movement. So many false gurus in the truth movement, so many people leading other people down the path of love and light, and not enough practical application to the world that we live in. You know, I've tried to show people that the need to love the people around you. Sure, I mean, I've promoted love because I think it's necessary. I think you've got to love yourself so that you can see the perfection of yourself, so that you can see the value of others, which gives you the ability to unite with people. But none of this love and light, let's meditate our way out of this mess that we're in, and let's love our attackers because we'll heal them with love, because that's not going to happen, folks. You know, you need to understand what love is. Love is not fear, and you should not be afraid of standing up and standing your ground and standing in your own and calling the system out for what it is. But with the truth movement, there's been too many people that have looked for gurus and looked for leaders in the truth movement to lead them to safety. And there's too many people that have wanted to be that. Too many people want to be the latest guru, or the latest this or the latest that. They're more concerned with their YouTube clips and their likes on Facebook and how many subscribers they've got than actually making a real difference. They're more interested in putting out sensationalistic reports that get lots of views, rather than putting out information that's going to empower people to become active on the ground where they live. There are too many people who are concerned in giving the audience what they want to hear rather than what they need to hear. And that has been a real problem. And the problem really has been with people's willingness to follow these people and believe that they need leaders to begin with. Because you don't need leaders, folks. You can lead yourself. There's nobody out there who has any more value than you, and there's nobody that you should give your power away to. You should just stand in your own power and ask questions when these corrupt rulers presume to inflict themselves upon you, regardless of whether they do it via their uniformed thugs or whether they do it themselves. You need to ask the questions. And the reason I've said that you need to love the people around you and be supportive of the people around you is because you need these people around you. You know, you need the people of your community. If you think you can stand alone and you're going to sail out of this on your own without the people, then you've left behind your greatest asset, because the greatest asset you have is all of the people around you, because many of them feel the same way. Many of them can see the system as being the corrupt mess that it is. They can see the government as being the corrupt mess that it is, and they want out too, but they don't know what to do. And they've never really thought that the power of community could actually change things if people were to just put down their stuff with each other and unite as one coordinated response to this system, that they could actually make a difference. And that's what I've promoted the whole time, folks. Anything that is going to cause you to look at the people around you differently and cause them to look at you a little differently, so that you can put down the barriers you have between yourself and these people. and stand as one. Because if we do that, we're going to change things, folks. We'll change things quite quickly. And it's getting to the point, hopefully, where people are realizing that they do have to stand on their own. You know, so many false prophets and so many fake leaders are being exposed now. They really are. There's been some very disturbing information coming out about certain members of the truth movement or so-called truth movement. There's been a lot of the facades breaking down. I said to people many months ago this would be a year of revelation where things are revealed, and we are very much seeing things revealed now. And it is shocking a lot of people, I can tell. There's a lot of people that are becoming very disturbed by some of the information that's coming out. But hopefully it will cause them to realize that they should not be giving their power away to other people. They should not be following or believing anybody. And I've often said that even about me, folks. Don't follow me or believe me. I'm just offering you a perspective. I'm just putting what I say out there for humble consideration in the hope that you may be able to apply some of it to your own life. But don't follow me. I don't want followers. I want to create leaders, not followers. Hey, I can't lead you. I'm just an everyday person like you. So I can't lead you, and I shouldn't be expected to lead you. The only person I can be responsible for is myself. But I think people are beginning to realize now that they really can only depend on themselves. There's no one they can truly depend on to lead them to safety. You know, they're just not going to get to a position of safety. They're not going to get to a position where they find remedy until they are willing to apply themselves to their own situation. And that's what everybody needs to realize, that no one's coming to save you. You've got to do it yourself. And you can do it yourself. And the beauty of it is there is such growth in doing so. There really is, you know, realizing the power you have and standing up for yourself and standing up for your community is a very inspirational thing. And it's something that everybody needs to do. We've got to realize that it's just a criminal gang, our governments, folks. It's just a criminal gang that has got a gang of thugs, the police, that they're using to carry out their will. You know, the police aren't enforcing the law and protecting the people. All they're doing is making you walk between the lines and making you adhere to the whim of politicians. And it's not acceptable. But there are a great many more of us than there are of them. And as soon as we choose to stop complying with this, we're going to make a difference. There's so many of us, folks, and we are the ones who hold the system up simply by our belief that the system is real. But we can change it. And it's getting to the point that we have to, folks. I mean, things are really escalating. They're escalating on the ground where we live in our own local communities, and they're escalating on the world stage too. What's going on with Turkey and NATO and all the stuff that's going on in Europe, this is very, very game-changing, folks. That may be just the trigger that they need to spark some sort of an international confrontation. But even if that were to happen, it's only going to happen if we choose to participate. But what if we didn't? What if they threw the war and nobody came? And that's what we need to consider, folks. It's us that fires the guns. It's us that does the work. It's us that mans all these missile batteries. It's us that flies the drones. It's us that does all of the work the government wants to do. And what the government has the people engaged in is simply the extermination of other people. People that they don't know, people that haven't done anything wrong to them, people that are just trying to live their lives the way they are. And the real problem here is government. And the truth of the matter is that government is very purposeful in what it does, because the governments of the world are in the process of killing the people of the world. But folks, I think we are now at the end of this show, so I'm going to have to leave it there for now. Thank you for joining me on the air today. It's always a pleasure to have your company. Thank you to everybody who has signed up to the Patreon account. I really cannot thank you enough. It is absolutely the only thing that is keeping me going these days, and so therefore the only thing that keeps the show on the air. I will try to get the show back on the air as regularly as I can as soon as I'm able, but I am dedicating most of my time to working on the new film at the moment, and I'd like to get that done by the end of the year. So I will be back to speak to you in the next week or two, and I'll look forward to speaking to you when I can manage to do so. But please take very good care until then. In Lakesh, my friends. In Lakesh.